This is Chicago's very own WGN Midday News.
While the CTA is offering free rides home on buses and trains this New Year's Eve, some transportation may be more expensive. Ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft could raise their prices if demand is high. Uber calls it surge pricing, Lyft calls it prime time. Either way, riders could be asked to pay double, triple, even 4 times more than what they would normally pay. Uber says riders will have to agree to the increased rate before they get in the car. And as ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft expand, it's always important to know the safety standards and insurance policies that affect you. Here to explain that, Grant Dixon, founding attorney of the Dixon Law Offices in Grange. Grant, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
All right, so a lot of people think that when they order that Uber or that Lyft car from their smartphone that they're basically hiring a taxi, except for sometimes it's cheaper than what they would normally do. But you're saying not so much the case.
No, people naturally assume that when they ask a car to come pick them up, that they're getting the same protections that they would in a cab company that would be in the city of Chicago. And unfortunately, that's not true.
What are the differences that we need to know about?
The prime differences, there's really 3. Number 1 is that the cabs that are operating licensed in the city of Chicago have to undergo various inspections, the cars themselves, at least twice a year. Second is the privacy concerns. When you sign up for Uber, the terms and use of agreement that you have to sign up for allows Uber to track you anytime they want. That's different than any cab company, and most of us wouldn't agree to it if we knew that was going on. Third is this insurance issue.
Right.
The state mandates that cab companies operating, and particularly in the city of Chicago, have $350,000 of insurance coverage. Uber doesn't follow those rules. There's some questions about how much insurance they really do carry, but they're certainly not complying with those state requirements.
Now, we did check with Uber, we checked with Lyft, and they said, you know what, we have this $1 million umbrella policy. If something were to happen, that's what they tell their riders, that's what they tell others. When you checked into it, tell me what your interpretation as an attorney is.
Uber has given various different stories about their insurance coverage. They've said that the driver's policy, the man or woman who's operating the cab at that particular time, that policy is primary. The problem with that is that a driver who's operating a commercial vehicle has to have commercial insurance. Your regular auto coverage doesn't work there.
Right.
Uber doesn't verify that the drivers have that kind of coverage. If that coverage isn't in place and done properly, then the $1 million policy doesn't apply. Other times Uber has said, hey, we have this $1 million policy and it's always there regardless of the driver's coverage. I have asked to see the policies. I've never been able to get a hold of them. They don't turn them over. And there's a lot of litigation going on around the country about that very issue.
So if you get into an Uber car or a Lyft car and you ask the driver, hey, do you have insurance? He says, yeah, I have insurance, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you as the rider are protected if you get into an accident.
No, and that's the whole point of all these regulations. No one likes to be regulated and have these rules, but they're all designed to protect passengers in case there is an accident. That's why you can't operate a cab in the city of Chicago or anywhere without appropriate insurance, because if something happens, we want to make sure that you are compensated and you're not left holding the bag for potentially millions of dollars of medical bills, lost wages, other things like that.
So when Governor Quinn vetoed the legislation last year and basically put Uber into the mainstream, so to speak, is there something that state legislators should now be looking at as far as putting some sort of rules in place to make sure that riders, consumers, are protected when they take these ride-sharing programs?
Absolutely. Uber, Lyft, any of these ride-share services need to have some special legislation so that they are governed just like taxi cab companies. They need to be put into that hole that taxi cabs are and be bound by those same rules and regulations. Because Uber says it's not a taxi cab and Lyft does as well, we're just a ride-sharing service, they claim that they don't have to abide by the rules of a taxi cab. And because of that, the legislation, they claim, doesn't apply. Lawyers who represent victims like I do have a very different opinion about those ride-sharing services and what they should do.
Always have different things when a new service comes along and you have to get it all worked out in the laws before you actually sometimes get into the car.
Absolutely. And the big thing is that passengers need to be protected. They need to make sure that when they get in the cab that they know that they're going to have a safe ride and that they're protected.
All right, Grant, thank you very much for joining us. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you for your time. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Dixon Law Office is at 1415 West 55th Street in LaGrange. For more information, you can visit attorneysmakingitright.com.